Xiao Yan was the bodyguard I found. He protected me for 10 years. Yet on the day our kingdom fell, he personally surrendered me to the enemy for the sake of my imperial sister. Later, when my escape failed and I hid in a village, he set it ablaze. Unexpectedly, the flames spread relentlessly, and I perished in the inferno. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day we first met. I immediately covered my eyes, feigning blindness as I passed by. Yet I heard of the mass graves that followed that day. A youth clad in black, blood-soaked, searched every passerby. When Xiao Yan found me, I was hiding in a dilapidated temple in Yunling village. Heat waves swept through the air, crimson flames like a colossal dragon enveloping the entire village. I tugged at my collar, suffocating in an indescribable agony. Outside, cries and screams formed a chaotic din as panic gripped the villagers. Only the imperial guards, led by Xiao Yan, stood motionless in a dense, dark mass. He stood astride his horse at the front of the army, his black cloak billowing, apparently losing patience. He ordered more fuel added to the flames before his gaze softened slightly as he spoke. "Xuan, won't you come out?" "Xuan," he called my name. He was burning the village to force my surrender. The flames grew ever more fierce, devouring even the air with greedy intensity. Receiving no response, his voice echoed outside once more. "Xiao Shuxun, Princess Changning, do you truly wish to watch these villagers die because of you?" I coughed lightly, gasping for breath, my teeth grinding with fury. Look, even now, he couldn't resist forcing me to choose between others and myself. What was most infuriating was that I always fell for his tricks. What could I do? I bore the Xiao surname, a princess of the imperial Xiao clan. Just as on that day when the city fell and the nation perished, he traded the people of Yindu as bargaining chips to secure my elder sister's release. Offering me up in surrender without hesitation. He offered me up so readily, so unexpectedly, that even now, recalling it, I can only laugh bitterly at how utterly ridiculous I must have seemed. Xiao Yan was the bodyguard I found. He guarded me with his life for 10 years. How could I have ever imagined his true identity was that of a discarded pawn from the enemy nation? My elder sister's secret agent? So I fled in the dead of night during my escort from the Jing Kingdom, and he raced 1,000 miles to capture me. I fled to this remote village to evade him. Yet he cornered me here, setting this blaze to force my surrender. He relishes orchestrating such games, a cat toying with its mouse. But this time, I've grown weary of playing along. So as the fire snakes crashed through the roof, I leaned against the wall, thinking calmly, at last, I can sleep in peace. Before my vision faded, I thought I heard Xiao Yan's shout and saw his figure charging into the flames. His robe billowed frantically. Those usually icy eyes were filled with terror as he trembled, calling my name, Xuan. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, almost smiling. The scene struck me as oddly absurd. But alas, it hadn't worked. So I couldn't be bothered to figure it out. This was clearly fulfilling his wish. What exactly was he afraid of? Looking like that? I died. But it seemed I hadn't quite succeeded. Because when I opened my eyes again, my long-dead maid, green robe, was tugging at my sleeves behind me, asking cautiously, "Princess, why aren't you moving forward?" It felt like I'd returned to the day I met Xiao Yan. I still remember, I was just 16 then, still known as the Mute Princess. On my first outing with my elder sister, Xiao Shuxun, to enjoy the spring scenery, she deliberately abandoned me at the foot of the mountain, in the mass grave. The sky over the mass grave was as gray as lead, and the air was thick with an indescribable stench of decay and blood. Green robe and I clung to each other, sobbing and encouraging one another, until we finally reached the edge of this field of corpses. And it was here that I found Xiao Yan, gazing at the large locust tree a few feet away. I once again stopped Green Robe as she tried to move forward. She looked at me in confusion. Princess. What is it? I didn't answer. Because I couldn't tell her that just a few steps ahead, beyond the low thicket, lay Xiao Yan, covered in blood, gravely wounded, and unconscious. In my past life, he'd been attacked and fled here, collapsing beneath this locust tree when his strength finally gave out. That was the exact spot Green Robe and I had to pass through. So when I tremblingly skirted around him, and he suddenly reached out to grab my ankle, I was terrified out of my wits. I flailed wildly and wailed for a long time. My struggle was so violent that my flailing hand struck his wounds, causing him to groan in pain. This forced him to sit up, his body weakened by his final moments of life. He reached around and covered my mouth, threatening, "Stop screaming." I immediately dropped my hands and nodded obediently, like a chick pecking at grain. But his voice was weak, lacking any real menace. What truly silenced me was the sight of his face. Even smeared with blood, its inherent brilliance remained undeniable. I grew still. After confirming he wasn't a ghost, I raised my hand and gestured earnestly at him. "What's your name? How old are you this year? Are you married? Do you have any plans to become a male courtesan?" Yes. I admitted, I wasn't exactly a proper princess. But Xiao Yan didn't answer my questions. He only fell silent for a moment before asking me. His expression unexpectedly surprised. "You are mute?" My expression immediately darkened with displeasure. I found his lack of tact offensive. Who would speak so bluntly to someone's face? Looking back now, his surprise likely stemmed from the fact that when my elder sister, the Empress, had planted him as my secret informant, she hadn't informed him that I couldn't speak. It wasn't until later, when I brought him back to the palace and made him my guard. I provided him with the finest clothing, lodging, and food, everything he needed. I gave him a level of dependence and trust I'd never extended to anyone else. And he betrayed me. So this time, gazing at the locust tree laden with yellow leaves before me, I turned without hesitation. With Green Robe in tow, I strode swiftly in the opposite direction, not pausing for a moment. Green Robe followed in bewilderment. "Princess, why did you suddenly change direction?" "Princess, I thought I saw a figure under that tree just now." "Princess." Enough. I halted my steps, not turning back, and frantically gestured at Green Robe. Then, as her gaze grew even more confused, I swiftly raised my hand to cover my eyes, and hers along with mine. "Meaning, Green Robe, your princess here is blind." The journey from the mass grave to the imperial city of Indu was only a 3-day trek. 3 days later, Green Robe and I stood at the city gates. Fallen leaves drifted through the air, against the vermilion palace gates. It reminded me of that autumn 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Because of Xiao Yan, what should have been a 3-day journey stretched to 7. Those 7 days, I was cold and starving. Yet not a single notice about the missing Princess Changning hung anywhere in Indu City. Some might say, "You're a princess, why not just go to the magistrate's office to claim your kin?" But I couldn't go. I was barely managing to hide. Because that was the price I paid for becoming mute all those years ago. Yet even though I'd hidden my tracks as best I could, assassins still found me. In that stormy night of flashing blades, I should have died. The time Green Robe bought me with his life was fleeting. I couldn't evade that sword that flew toward me. Yet the cold blade never touched my body. Xiao Yan saved me. It was the first time he shielded me. When he stood before me, sword raised, the wound on his arm still bled. He was already gravely wounded these past days. I had merely kept him alive with herbs I'd gathered by chance. I don't know what sustained him then, driving him to risk his life and slit the throat of the last assassin. His body, covered in jagged, exposed wounds. His numb, Bloodshot eyes, he resembled a fierce specter crawling out of hell to claim souls. Looking back now, it was likely his ambition and his loyalty to my imperial sister. But back then, when I asked him why he risked his life to save me, he merely flinched slightly and chose to avoid the question. He only left a vague remark about wanting to save his former self, then collapsed straight onto me. Well, that settled it. There was nothing more to ask. I could only resign myself to hoisting him onto my back, carrying him all the way to the imperial city gates, all the way to my father, the emperor, and my father merely gave a faint nod, granting him permission to become my guard, just as he is now. Nearly the entire imperial clan of the Xiao clan crowded into the grand hall. Facing me, the long-lost princess Changning. No excitement. No ripples. As if my presence or absence made no difference whatsoever. Only this time, Xiao Yan, whom I had rescued, was absent. My elder sister, Xiao Shuxun, standing beside me, had a barely perceptible frown between her brows. Then came news of Xiao Yan. Over 2 months had passed since my rebirth and return to the imperial capital of Indu. Much like my previous life, events unfolded with identical predictability within the gaps of time. The sole change was the absence of Xiao Yan by my side, replaced by the somewhat unfamiliar maidservant Louis. Louis was actually quite young, several months younger than me. Yet her early death in my past life had blurred my memories of her appearance. Precisely because of her youth. She often delighted in recounting tales she'd gathered from other palaces about the outside world. Among these, 2 stories left me uneasy. The first was that a strange occurrence had recently unsettled the people of Ning'an County, over 100 li outside the city. Upon further inquiry, I learned that someone had caused a disturbance at the northern county's mass grave. The troublemaker was a youth clad in black, covered in blood and appearing gravely wounded. After someone rescued him, instead of expressing gratitude, he immediately dragged his injured body back to the graveyard, stumbling and staggering all the way. He searched there for a long time, as if hunting for some lost treasure. Finding nothing, he began stopping every passerby, asking if they had encountered a mute girl. Who in their right mind would idle away their day worrying whether a girl could speak? Thus, the people of Ning'an County, seeing his decent appearance but bizarre behavior, dismissed him as mentally unstable and paid him no further mind. Unexpectedly, days later, the situation began to take a strange turn. Initially, the youth remained polite when stopping people to ask. But as time passed, he seemed possessed. His eyes grew fierce, his body covered in blood, and he would stop anyone carrying a sword. Whenever he received a negative answer, a flash of cold steel would follow, and blood would spatter. Though he never truly took anyone's life, the incident caused such a stir that people rushed to report it to the authorities. Yet by the time the authorities arrived, the youth had vanished without a trace. The matter was eventually swept under the rug. The other incident involved the Jing Kingdom, a perennial border aggressor, finally retrieving their long-lost pawn, the 4th prince, Xiao Yan. Thus, in the gentle breeze of early spring in the 3rd month of the following year, at the peace banquet between the 2 nations, I saw Xiao Yan once more. Though termed a marriage alliance, it was merely a defeated nation's forced capitulation. Thus, in my previous life at this very moment, as royalty of the vanquished kingdom, I sat at the far end of the left side of the grand hall, while Xiao Yan, my guard, stood behind me. Now, a different guard stood behind me. Xiao Yan, however, had transformed into Xiao Yan, the 4th prince of Jing Kingdom, entering the hall at a measured pace alongside the crown prince and envoys. In this life, I had avoided encountering him. Logically, our paths should never have crossed. Yet the moment he saw me, Xiao Yan's pupils fluttered slightly, as if he'd found something long lost and now recovered. When his gaze fell upon the guard behind me, it instantly shifted to a look of resentment, as if his place had been usurped. It was inexplicable. He and I had merely crossed paths at the mass grave that day. I hadn't allowed him to become the secret agent Xiao Shuxun had planted beside me. He shouldn't have harbored such deep-seated resentment and held a grudge just because he failed his mission. So I merely lifted my gaze lazily, sweeping the room without even sparing him a glance. Yet throughout the entire banquet, Xiao Yan's eyes never seemed to leave me. He appeared oblivious to the concept of avoiding suspicion, or even the nature of the occasion. His gaze felt tangible, so intense that the crown prince of Jing Kingdom, who sat before him, glanced between us, set down his wine cup, and asked with a hint of amusement, "Fourth brother, you've been staring at Princess Changning since we entered. Could it be you and the princess share some past acquaintance?" The royal family of Jingwa produced many handsome men, and Crown Prince Chijing was no exception, fair as jade, lips like painted vermilion. Whether smiling or not, his eyes and brows radiated an air of languid ease. Yet he was equally notorious as a useless puppet, skilled only in indulging in pleasure and achieving nothing of substance. Thus, the succession struggle in Jing Kingdom raged fiercely. Everyone looked down on him, yet everyone coveted his throne, including Xiao Yan. In his previous life, from Jing Kingdom to the Xiao clan, no one had ever taken him seriously. But the outcome later proved brutally harsh. Chijing merely appeared easygoing. In truth, he was a ruthlessly cunning and vicious man. On that night in the past life, the very day he seized the throne, he marched his army to our city gates, smiling as he trampled the blood of his own people. Working in collusion with Xiao Yan, he brought about the fall of our city and the destruction of our nation. Even the eldest princess, Xiao Shuxun, who had betrayed her country by collaborating with the enemy, did not receive the promises Jingwa had made to her afterward. The first act of Chijing after breaching our walls was to imprison her, intending to send her to the military camp as a concubine to coerce the Xiao royal family into surrendering the fish dragon military seal. Within that seal lay the secret to the Xiao clan's prosperity and glory. He who possesses the fish dragon seal gains access to the world's boundless treasures. Thus, the events that followed unfolded as a natural consequence. No one knew the whereabouts of the fish dragon military seal. But Xiao Yan knew, because he was the person I trusted most. So he bound me, trading me for Xiao Shuxun, and personally surrendered me, bearing the token, to Chijing. This marriage alliance was meant to secure the position of secondary consort to Crown Prince Chijing. The moment these words left his mouth, every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. A disfavored princess of the Xiao clan paired with the abandoned prince of the former Jing Kingdom, this was hardly a favorable match. I clenched the pastry in my hand, lips pressed tight in silence. Xiao Yan was not the impulsive sort, though he seldom showed much emotion in daily life. His wolfish ambition for revenge and succession meant he was inseparable from the word scheming. Just like later, when he pursued me, always patiently playing cat and mouse with me. But now, Xiao Yan seemed to finally realize the impropriety of his actions. His body stiffened, and he opened his mouth to explain. But I stood up before he could speak. Confusion spread across my face. Nervously, I gestured toward my father, the emperor, and the assembled ministers. I don't know this man. I wasn't sure if the others understood this preemptive move. I believed Xiao Yan grasped it. His hand at his side clenched tightly, trembling slightly as he stared at me in disbelief. Chijing, however, uttered a leisurely "oh," drawing out the syllable, "so Princess Changning is mute." He and Xiao Yan were indeed blood brothers, even their words shared the same irritating quality. His remark was utterly tactless, showing no regard for my dignity, nor naturally for the Xiao clans. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Yet no one anticipated Chijing's sudden shift. With a composed smile, he uttered a startling declaration, then, I shall request Princess Changning's hand in marriage. A clatter echoed as a porcelain cup slipped from Xiao Yan's feet and shattered. Truthfully, this wasn't the first time I'd witnessed such a scene. In my previous life, when Jing learned I was mute, he had similarly proposed marriage on the spot. Yet everyone knew this political marriage was meant for the third princess. Feng Yang. Not me. The fifth princess. Changning. Jing's actions were merely him, representing the Jing Kingdom, showing contempt for the Xiao royal family. Though we all understood the logic, we knew this was deliberate humiliation. But at that moment, half of Xiao Yan's face was shrouded in darkness. Without the status of an imperial sword-bearer, he seized the jade-inlaid dagger from the table and stood alone before me, demanding, "Apologize to our young master." As mentioned earlier, Jing usually presented himself as a man of temperament. He paid little heed, shrugging off with a flippant tone, "Oh, my apologies. My apologies. I was rude to your little highness." He emphasized the word "your" with deliberate emphasis, his light chuckle adding a touch of irritating condescension. I pulled Xiao Yan's sleeve back toward me without showing emotion, maintaining my feigned confusion. Xiao Yan stiffened and retreated behind me. When the incident was later resolved, Xiao Yan was punished by the emperor for misconduct in the palace hall, 30 strokes with a cane and confinement in the Ministry of Justice. When he returned, drained of color, he collapsed into my arms. Before I could nurse him back to health, the palace's surging undercurrents forced him to take up his sword again. For 10 years, he shielded me through life-threatening perils. I knew Xiao Yan bore many scars, and I knew the origin of each one. The most severe cut ran horizontally from his left chest across his heart. By the narrowest margin, he nearly collapsed before my eyes, never to open them again. He risked his life to protect me, that was true. His loyalty to me, that was true. So on that snowy night, when we clung to each other for warmth in the cave, I held his body as it grew cold. In his utterly astonished gaze, with a voice hoarse from long silence and unfamiliarity, I revealed the secret of my speechlessness and the truth of my relationship with Xiao Shuxun. I had placed him as my queen on the chessboard. Little did I know that years later, he would become the fatal checkmate to my entire army. Now, I watched Xiao Yan silently staring at me from behind Jing. I recalled how in my past life, he knew I would never truly marry Jing. That was why he orchestrated that grand deception, ultimately turning me into a fallen soul in his and Xiao Shuxun's camp. Back then, I didn't know what he and Xiao Shuxun were plotting, nor when Xiao Shuxun had uncovered my true nature, prompting her to strike first. But now, I know. I won't sit idly by and wait for my doom. What could infuriate the enemy more than sleeping soundly within their own stronghold? So, under the watchful eyes of all present, I rose once more with deliberate grace, adopting the dignified bearing befitting a princess. Signing with meticulous care, I conveyed, "Father Emperor, your daughter volunteers to serve as an envoy to the Kingdom of Jing for a marriage alliance, ensuring peace between our two nations." Lowering my hands, I tilted my head and offered a sweet smile to the assembly. Ignorant, naive, the very image of that rumored, unloved fifth princess, the mute girl. This sudden turn of events plunged everyone present into another brief silence. The other party involved, Jing, raised an eyebrow upon seeing my gestures, studying me intently for a long moment. Then a low, meaningful chuckle escaped his lips. "Very well. It is settled then." Behind him, Xiao Yan's hand gripping the sword at his side tensed, veins bulging as a cold, ominous glint gathered in his eyes. 7 days later, I was sent to the Kingdom of Jing as a peace marriage princess. Before my departure, my father, the emperor, unexpectedly engaged in a rare display of filial affection. His hand clasped mine stiffly, his eyes cloudy and expressionless as ever. In a steady tone, He briefed me on the arrangements for the journey. Xiao Shuxun even took my hand, inquiring about my well-being with unexpected warmth. I responded to each with unreadable composure, observing the unmistakable confidence radiating from Xiao Shuxun's brow. Inside, I thought, the fish has taken the bait. Just days ago, she was restless and depressed. She's never been one to hide her feelings, they're always written across her face. Why is that? Because she disdains it. Because she is the grand heroine of this entire world. When did I first realize this? Probably around the age of 7. After waking from her fall from the horse, Xiao Shuxun became a different person. My imperial elder sister, the eldest princess Xiao Shuxun, had always cherished me most. But after she awoke, she remained outwardly kind and harmonious with me. Yet she never again quietly pushed open my door on nights when I lay awake, unable to sleep, to give me a sweet piece of honey. At first, I thought she was just in a bad mood from the fall. Until later, when she sent me that plate of poison pastries. She wanted to kill me countless times. But alas, she never succeeded. I didn't know why she failed, nor why I always managed to dodge her assassination attempts by sheer luck. Later, I witnessed her casually fling a jade ornament from her hand, her voice icy as she berated the kneeling guard. I'm the female lead. I can't even kill an antagonist early? What kind of crappy rules are these? Suddenly, I understood. Then came the year I lost my voice at 14. The next day, she raised an eyebrow in surprise upon seeing me. How come you can still talk? I froze for a second, then let my body go limp and collapsed backward. From that moment on, I became mute by choice. As for why I gave in, and why Xiao Shuxun grew so brazen, it was because I discovered that every prophecy she spoke came true. Without fail. No one could stand against her. So she feared nothing and avoided nothing. On the journey from Yingdu to Jingwa, Jing escorted me the entire way. While protecting me, he also indulged in his usual flirtatious ways. Such blatant behavior prompted the accompanying entourage to privately express sympathy toward me. I accepted it with apparent ease, putting on the appearance of a princess who had come for a marriage alliance without regret. The sole exception was Xiao Yan. He would always appear near me with a seemingly careless air. But my surveillance was too tight, he could only hover at a distance. On several occasions, Jing, still lacking tact, would tease him, causing Xiao Yan to clench the reins in his hand. His face darkening, Xiao Yan looked down on Jing. Even in his previous life, when Jing succeeded in the succession struggle, Xiao Yan believed it was merely due to the backing of his powerful family. Later, when Jing ruthlessly purged both nations with an iron fist, Xiao Yan still harbored his own wolfish ambitions, seeking to seize what he believed rightfully belonged to him. He and Jing had never been on good terms. Thus, he remained unaware that my escape from the prisoner convoy had been personally authorized by Jing. Nor did he know that Jing, who spent his nights in drunken revelry, would return to his military tent, toss me a flask of wine with a smirk, and ask with a sideways glance, Xiao Shuxun, you've really gotten addicted to playing dumb, haven't you? Upon reaching the kingdom of Jing, I was unsurprisingly placed in the annex of Crown Prince Jing's residence. Just as when we broke camp, the guards here were equally formidable, and Xiao Yan still couldn't get in. It wasn't until 10 days later, on the day of my wedding to Jing, when security was lax. That night, Xiao Yan, clad in black, burst in wielding a sword. He knocked out the guards outside the door. When he rushed in, I was alone, dressed in my wedding gown, adorned with jade ornaments, sitting by the bed. Not recognizing him, I thought it was Jing. I raised my hand to gesture twice. Mid-motion, a warm hand grasped my arm. I pressed my lips together and lifted my veil. Xiao Yan stared at me with dark, intense eyes. I knew he had reincarnated too. Xiao Yan held my hand, saying nothing. Perhaps he saw the confusion and unfamiliarity in my eyes. His voice was hoarse as he spoke, Xiao, I've come to take you away. I continued pretending not to recognize him, flailing my arms in refusal. My frantic struggles mirrored that day at the mass grave, when he had frightened me into flailing wildly. He seemed to recall it too. The solemn curve of his mouth softened into a gentle smile. Xiao, I know you refuse to acknowledge me now, but Changning is no good man. Rest assured. Today I will protect you out of here. Saying this, he grabbed my hand, ready to lead me away. But I struggled even more fiercely. Unable to speak, I could only emit hoarse cries. The reborn Xiao Yan had indeed changed greatly. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to do anything to me. But now, with a single command, Xiao, today I will take you away, he forcibly wrapped his left arm around my waist, sword in hand, determined to force his way out. See? He wasn't always the steadfast, loyal figure he presented before me. A rebellious streak still ran through his veins. So despite knowing the consequences of betraying me, he did it for Xiao Shuxun. Afterward, he feigned concern, coaxing me, Xiao, I won't let anything happen to you. Nothing will happen to me? Then I'll make sure something happens to him. Just as Xiao Yan prepared to lead me out the palace doors, 3 claps echoed from the previously silent entrance. The sound grew louder in an instant. Changning strode in with his men, a playful smile playing on his lips. Fourth brother, where are you taking His Majesty's concubine? Xiao Yan pushed me behind him without a flicker of emotion. His jade-like face darkened, his brows and eyes turning as black as ink. His expression icy. On the day the Xiao clan's kingdom fell, when rebel troops stormed the imperial city, burning and pillaging within the palace walls, Xiao Yan had once placed me behind him like this. His grip on my hand was so tight my knuckles turned white. My waist, back, arms, not a single spot was unscathed. He led me through the chaos, fighting with bloodshot eyes. Even when facing Chang's army head-on, he remained unyielding, his resolve as unbreakable as iron. But then he saw Xiao Shuxun, holding my trembling hand. He asked, Your Highness, if I traded you for all the people of Yingdu, would you hate me? He was quite skilled at justifying his actions. He wanted to trade me for Xiao Shuxun, yet threatened me with Yingdu. Just like now, the same scene, the same people. Without Xiao Shuxun as an option, he still pretends loyalty, acts as if he never betrayed me, as if it never happened. How could that be acceptable? I hold grudges. Xiao Yan stood alone before me, struggling desperately. 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. He's constantly at a disadvantage, covered in wounds again. But as if by fate, the guards surrounding Changning suddenly lost their formation. Xiao Yan seized the chance, charging straight forward. His sword's edge was sharp and cold, aimed directly at Changning. I looked down at his hand gripping mine and curved my lips, twisting my wrist. I pulled away with force, just as he panicked, reaching to grab me again. I ran toward Changning, positioning myself in front of him, my expression blank. I raised my hand. If you want to kill him, kill me first. Xiao Yan's sword halted inches from me. He stared at me with an almost vacant gaze, seemingly unable to believe I'd shielded Changning from his blade. But what did it matter? By the time he released his grip and the sword fell, the swarming imperial guards had already pinned him to the ground. Xiao Yan choked out hoarsely, his voice thick with resentment, Xiao. Why? Why? I wanted to ask you the same thing. But none of that mattered anymore. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a shadow darting along the southeast outer wall. Changning and I exchanged a glance. The show was finally about to begin. Xiao Yan was forced to his knees by the imperial guards pressing him from behind. He looked up at me, seated side by side with Changning, and finally grasped the situation. He struggled anxiously, swaying. He can't be trusted. Oh. I set down my teacup, raised an eyebrow slightly, and sneered coldly, then can you be trusted? My voice was still hoarse from too long without speaking, but it was clear enough for Xiao Yan to hear. The color drained instantly from his face, replaced by a grimace uglier than a cry, swaying. You've finally deigned to speak to me. Yes. I finally spoke. The Xiao Yan of the past risked his life to guard the secret for me. The reborn Xiao Yan now longs for me to shatter it. I rose from my seat and picked up the sword he had confiscated. This sword is called Crush Mountain. I named it. I once wished Xiao Yan could shake the mountains free and dwell eternally in verdant peaks. Now, I pressed this blade against his throat. Xiao Yan, when you surrendered me, did you ever imagine a day like this? Xiao Yan stared blankly at the sword against his neck. I couldn't tell what thoughts raced through his mind. He closed his eyes with resignation, looking utterly helpless. Swaying. I'm returning it to you. That actually made me laugh. What kind of creature are you to even use the word return? I flung the sword to the ground and looked down at him from above. Xiao Yan, my greatest regret is saving you all those years ago. Xiao Yan snapped his head up, utterly thrown off balance. Those words felt like the final stab to his heart, draining him of all vitality. Changning had him imprisoned in the imperial jail. The interrogation went remarkably smoothly. Whatever Changning asked, he answered. When questioned why he chose Xiao Shuxun and surrendered me instead, he fell silent for a long time, because I couldn't control myself. Couldn't control yourself? After Changning relayed this to me, I collapsed back into my chair, laughing bitterly. It was the most laughable joke I'd ever heard. Anyone else saying that would sound perfectly reasonable. But coming from Xiao Yan, it was utterly ironic. Because I had told him about Xiao Shuxun. I had told him that Xiao Shuxun was the master of this world. I had warned him that when faced with matters concerning Xiao Shuxun, almost everyone would instantly lose their reason and act against their own will. That's why I urged him to control himself. Never let Xiao Shuxun bewitch you. Yes. I know this sounds unreasonable. It seems he bears some injustice. After all, when one's thoughts are forcibly manipulated by so-called rules, how much self-control is needed to break free from the delusion? Why did I demand this of Xiao Yan? Because others succeeded. Because everyone else besides Xiao Yan has succeeded. My father the emperor. My imperial siblings. My true imperial sister Xiao Shuxun. And Changning, the thorn in his side. They all succeeded. 20 years ago, my mother the Empress Dowager died suddenly in the Regency office after glimpsing the heavenly secrets of this catastrophe. My father, clinging to his last shred of sanity, placed the military token upon me. Because of his resistance, he became a numb puppet, mechanically performing predetermined actions, mechanically following his prescribed path. Xiao Shuxun grinned as she called him NPC. She knew the predetermined paths of every one of us. She declared I was a minor NPC obstructing her path to becoming Empress, best eliminated early. Thus, day after day, I faced relentless waves of assassination attempts. Those assassins had no names, no origins, sometimes not even faces. Such were Xiao Shuxun's rules. She knew everything about us. Yet we knew nothing. Until that day at 14, when I feigned muteness. Her arrogance revealed a flaw in her system. I lay dormant for over a decade. But in the end, Xiao Yan told me I couldn't control myself. Quite laughable. But I blame my own short life. That fire meant to force me out wasn't meant to kill. Xiao Shuxun said I'd die en route back to Jing Kingdom. I escaped. Yet ultimately, I couldn't evade death's fate. So on the 7th day after my rebirth, on the 4th day of testing Xiao Shuxun in Indu City, I met Changning at an inn outside the city walls. Because he, too, had been reborn. But with a difference. His rebirth was cyclical. Changning is this world's male lead. He has awakened. He was destined to engage in a love-hate struggle with Xiao Shuxun. But he rejected the fate others had set for him. He told me that in the previous life, after my death, his male lead luck still couldn't overcome Xiao Shuxun. She not only slaughtered everyone of the Xiao clan but also massacred the entire imperial city of Jing Kingdom. Finally, she ascended as empress, unifying the realm, proudly proclaiming, "I did this to liberate countless women from feudal oppression. I am the heaven-chosen heroine. Any man who dared defy her faced dismemberment." That's why Changning sought me out, the first to uncover Xiao Shuxun's weakness. I watched my father, the emperor, repeating the same actions and words day after day for decades. I watched my brothers and sisters, the imperial princes and princesses, standing blankly by the palace walls each day. Changning and I worked together in secret, exchanging information about Xiao Shuxun's rules. That's how the scene at the marriage alliance banquet came to be. It was a clear message to Xiao Shuxun. We are no longer under her control. To instill panic within her. Thus, she had Xiao Yan followed all along, because she knew Xiao Yan would inevitably seek me out. And the message carried by that departing shadow that night was sufficient leverage to topple Xiao Shuxun. In the midnight hours not long after, we finally waited for Xiao Shuxun. Changning said that within Xiao Shuxun's flawless rules, she had one unavoidable calamity, and that was the entanglement of his feelings for her. According to the predetermined plot, Xiao Shuxun had once loved Changning, and it was because of Changning that she suffered her only heartbreak. By the lakeside in Yichuan, she was struck by an arrow fired by a girl who adored Changning, facing imminent death. Truthfully, she couldn't die. No one could kill her, even minor NPCs like me, whom she dismissed as insignificant, couldn't die before their designated time, let alone the protagonist of this world. But there was one exception. The loophole I discovered. If another mortal, someone equally destined to die, acted while Xiao Shuxun was near death, there was a chance to kill her. That's why I appeared here. Seeing me standing beside Changning, Xiao Shuxun wore an expression that said, "So it was you, Xiao Yan. You've actually developed self-awareness?" She curled her lips in disdain. "You don't seriously think hooking up with Changning will let you take me on, do you? You know what?" She pointed at Changning beside me, a malicious smile spreading across her face. "I bet you anything, before I finish 3 sentences, he'll help me kill you." Her tone dripped with contempt. Because events unfolded exactly as she'd predicted. She merely recited the lines from the script Changning had mentioned, and instantly his eyes hardened. He drew the sword at his waist and thrust it toward me. I was chased by Changning, fleeing in disarray. Xiao Shuxun raised her eyebrows triumphantly, watching me slashed by Changning's sword. Clinging to life, she laughed breathlessly, as if observing an insect. "Xiao Yan. Oh Xiao Yan. You think you can challenge me? You didn't really believe I didn't notice you feigning muteness, did you?" Her laughter turned maniacal. I was too exhausted from evading to respond to her taunts. Until, covered in blood, I feigned retreat from Changning but swiftly closed the distance. Before Xiao Shuxun could react, I drew a dagger from my sleeve and thrust it through her chest. Behind me, Changning's eyes instantly regained their clarity. I exhaled the breath I'd been holding, smiling at Xiao Shuxun, whose eyes were filled with disbelief. For the first time in years of silence, I spoke to her. "Yes, Imperial sister, you really are quite charming." As I spoke, I thrust the dagger in my hand deep into her, then carved and gouged. I carved until her flesh split open. her screams piercing with agony. Xiao Shuxun glared at me with vicious hatred. If you want to kill me, you'll die too. Yes. To kill her, I would surely die. So I had long prepared myself, closing my eyes, waiting for her counterattack. But in the very next second, a familiar hand grabbed me from behind. Then came the flash of a blade. Opening my eyes, I saw Xiao Yan standing sword in hand, having pierced Xiao Shuxun through with a single thrust. And he had also blocked Xiao Shuxun's fatal strike for me. I stood frozen in place, stunned, as a cool breeze swept by. I saw him turn his head, murmuring my name, Your Highness. The youth's final awakening finally swung the sword at the past he had never broken through. Before his eyes closed forever, he thought, Suen was right after all. Xiao Shuxun's control over him was merely a thread. It was his own wavering that made him a puppet. The light that never truly belonged to him 10 years ago would finally fade away without a trace a decade later. Compared to Xiao Yan, Xiao Shuxun seemed to have such a long life. Even as she died, she screamed hoarsely, "This can't be. You can't kill me. I'm clearly the female lead. Everything I did was to overthrow patriarchy. To prove women can succeed. That women can become emperors and stand at the pinnacle of this world." Watching her descend into madness, I calmly withdrew my gaze. Yes, you are the female protagonist. But women have never secured their rights by trampling over corpses and seas of blood. You fought for gender equality and fairness. Yet your starting point was inherently unfair. Feminism isn't achieved by slaughtering all men to claim rights. The rise of women's thought doesn't require defeating men to prove its worth. This world holds fathers, brothers, mothers, and sisters. We coexist through myriad bonds, not merely through love that dictates gender roles. To truly stand firm in this world, it is the strength within your heart, the richness of your spirit and substance, that matters, not the recognition granted by men's lips. Xiao Shuxun, you have never truly loved yourself. I don't know if she heard me, nor if she could understand. I only know that the moment her form faded away, I saw my imperial sister, the true Xiao Shuxun. She smiled and reached out her hand to me, as if to stroke my head as she once did. I smiled back, holding back the tears welling in my eyes. You see, my sister, she is the woman I truly admire. 3 months later, when all was settled, my father, brothers, and sisters gradually returned to normal. The Xiao clan also signed a century-long alliance with the Jing Kingdom, pledging peace along the borders. One afternoon, Qi Zheng and I met at a mountain cottage to drink together. After 3 rounds of wine, leaning against the railing and gazing out, he smiled and said, "Someone asked me why I don't stay with you? They say we've weathered so much together, share such deep trust, why hasn't love blossomed between us?" I gazed at the delicate patterns on my porcelain cup, raised it, and offered him a toast. As the warm mountain breeze caressed us, I heard my own reply. Because one failed relationship doesn't mean I need another man's salvation or redemption. The end.